In the trains alone, it took 10 years from the time I became interested in it to getting the first. When things are dying, that's when I actually begin to see hope and potential. Growing up, I wanted to be a pilot. If I could go back in time to any moment in my life, I would go back to secondary school. Sometimes they have these nude paint classes where females will come and pose naked for you, and I was very excited. I was like, yes, that's the course I want to do in the university. Sometimes I even go and borrow money from friends. I would use it to do an experiment. It didn't work. I will do something else, get the money, pay them back. Being a Ghanaian is difficult enough. And being a Northerner is super difficult enough. People say, oh, but why are you building an institution? What would it bring you? What money will it bring you? Art is not the talent that you have. Art is what you make out of the talent that you have.
Marhaba, welcome to another exciting episode of the Prince Hamdan podcast. My name is Prince Hamdan, and it's an honor to be having this all-important guest. My guest for today is somebody who is very well celebrated in Ghana and out of Ghana. And his charisma, his passion and love for what he does has distinguished him and made him one of the most sought-after artists in the world. And but one of the things many love about him is his humility and the legacy he's living in the northern part of Ghana, which is his magnificent project, which we are going to be talking about later on. The reason why this conversation is also important to me is because I'm also an artist and one who hasn't been able to find my way very well. And I'm glad because he has been able to do a lot of great stuff as an artist. And I mean, there are a lot of other young people out there who would be willing or who would want to learn a thing or two to also help them find their way in their journey to becoming great artists like he is. He's also a newlywed, so he's the latest angle in town. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest for today's podcast is none other but Ibrahim Mahama, the artist. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to Prince Hamdan's podcast.
Thank you.
First of all, how's married life treating you?
It's good. At least once you're married, in the middle of the night, no one is going to call your wife to ask her to come home.
Yes. And I must say congratulations to you for, I mean, it's not easy to get married. So I must say congratulations. It's not easy.
Especially in this part of the world, with all the ceremonies and things that come along with it. But I think it's also an interesting exercise. It allows you to be able to restructure your life in many different ways that you possibly never thought about. So I'm quite very happy that I took this step.
I'm really honored to be having a conversation with you today.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine.
A lot of people ask, are you related to the Mahamas? Talking about the ex-president John Mahama and his family.
No, not at all. Okay. You know, Mahama is a common northern name. Okay. Yeah. So the connection that we have with them is that the house that my father lives in, that my father bought that house in the late 80s. I partly, like when I was a year old, that's when we moved to that house.
Oh, wow.
That house used to be a state bungalow, which was acquired by the late father of like the former president.
Oh, okay.
And then he sold it to someone, and then that person sold it to my dad.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the connection that we have. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. You've been doing a lot of great stuff in Tamale. And one of them recently you brought these trains, airplanes, and all of those things. I want to ask, a lot of people may be hearing about you. They don't really know who Ibrahim Mahama is. If I ask, who is Ibrahim Mahama? What would be your answer?
Oh, well, Ibrahim is just an artist, someone who is interested in what the potentials of the world is. And trying to use art as just a means to be able to unleash these potentials. So for me, when everything stops, when things are dying, that's when I actually begin to see hope and potential and all that. So art has that possibility of seeing the things that society usually doesn't see because we don't have the luxury of profit and loss. And people say, oh, but why are you building an institution? What would it bring you? What money will it bring you?
Can you tell us a little bit about your early life as a child growing up?
Well, childhood, I was born in Tamale in 1987. I grew up in Accra. I went to various boarding schools. Due to the boarding schools that we attended, my siblings and I developed a love for drawing because drawing was one of the things that kept me company when I was a child. I really did a lot of drawing. And then when I was about going to secondary school in the early 2000s, my father suggested, why not study art because I'm always drawing.
Drawing, okay.
So I said, okay, why not? But I wasn't really into it. So I went on to study art. And even getting art in secondary school was not easy because at the time, the school that I had chosen two schools. That was St. Peter's and Pope John. And St. Peter's, two of my senior brothers had already gone there. Pope John, one of my senior brothers, was there already in his final year. And St. Peter's, they didn't have visual arts, but Pope John had visual arts. My father said, oh, you chose St. Peter's, but there is Pope John. Why don't you go to Pope John? So Pope John is like, we're not going to give you Pope John because you chose this as a second choice. So eventually, after going back and forth, they decided to give me admission. But then they said, we cannot give you visual arts because there's only one visual arts class and the class is over full.
Wow.
So I said, okay, fine, I take whatever you give me. So I went to school and then I would go to the headmaster's office constantly to harass him. Because my father, each time I call my father, it's like, have you changed the course? So one time, the headmaster said, look, okay, fine. The best I can do is that if you find someone in the visual arts class who is willing to swap with you.
Yeah.
So I went there to announce that if anyone wants to swap and go to, and most often some people are in visual arts, but that's not what they chose.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I went to make an announcement. And lo and behold, there was one guy in the class who didn't want to be in that class. And that's how I started. That's how I started studying art in secondary school.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I would spend, because I was also a day student, the school was also full. It was supposed to have a population of, let's say, 500 students, but they admitted over 1,200 students.
Oh.
So it meant that if you failed in some courses, you'd be sacked.
You're out, yeah.
But I never understood how people managed to fail courses.
Oh.
People were being sacked. By the time we finished, we were like 700 and something from 1,200. And I was a day student. They said, we can't give you boarding house. Be in a hostel, come. So I was in a hostel, walking through the bushes, coming to school. Everyone that knows Koforidua in the terrain, there was no water. Yeah. You have to wake up early in the morning to go and fetch water from the well, things like that. So I don't know. So those trainings, I thought, something that when I think about my days growing up in boarding school, like, because it wasn't boarding school, because everyone in Accra said, we've gone to boarding school. But technically, I was a day student, staying in a hostel, going to school. Yeah. And I thought those were my formative years, because in Koforidua, there was a painter there called Park Christ that I became friends with. He was a street painter, and I used to spend a lot of time. Sometimes I wouldn't go to school. I'd go and sit in a shop just watching him paint. They were making like silk screen, like
printing
t-shirts and things like that. And I learned a lot from it. I learned how to do it, and I used to make those for people at home, and I'll collect the money, and I'll use that to buy materials to experiment and make the kind of works that today I'm known for globally. So secondary school years, I always thought that was some of the, if I could go back in time to any moment in my life, I would go back to secondary school. I was not wild. I was such a calm guy, but the fact that at that time, I was so courageous, I could decide that I'm not going to school and I would just go and sit in a painter's shop just to see what they were doing. I think that it was something really special within that time. Yeah.
So after secondary school, did you proceed to do art in your tertiary level?
Yes, I did. I went to KNUST actually.
Okay.
And at the time when I was in secondary school, they were doing this career development, and most of our teachers had actually gone to study in KNUST because it's literally the only university you can go and have a degree in art. Like not performance arts Legon, but visual arts tech.
Yeah.
So some of them, like now one of my mentors, caricature, he had a friend, Mr. Osei. Mr. Osei was our painting teacher. So he used to teach me painting on the side, aside like the traditional curriculum. Because in secondary school, the curriculum is so limited. Even like materials like oil paint, acrylic, gouache, all those things were not there. Yeah. It was postal colors that we're meant to work with. And my father was very supportive. He was buying me all these materials to experiment. So some of my teachers were teaching me. So later when I asked, what are the career possibilities when you go to the university? What can you study? I said, you can study architecture, you can do this and that, but also said, oh, when you do painting, sometimes they have this nude paint classes where females will come and pose naked for you, and I was very excited. I was like, yes, that's the course I want to do in the university.
Okay,
but it was a scam. When I went to the university, I don't naked. Of course, later there was we had a nude. We had this girl that used to come and pose for us, but we had to pay to do like figure study drawings, things like that. So I decided I would study painting. And then once I went to the university and I realized the potentials that there were in the course of painting, it's actually opened up ideas to architecture and all these other disciplines. So I ended up doing my undergrad in KNUST, my master's in KNUST, and then my PhD. Yeah.
In KNUST.
Yeah, KNUST.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
All in art.
Wow. Amazing. What kind of art do you do? The kind of art you do, how do you call it?
Well, it's just art, but mostly you have art that can be installation based, art that can be drawing based, sculpture based, textile based, ceramic. In the case of the work behind us, which is part of the work that I did for a project in Manchester called the Parliament of Ghosts, where I collected a lot of old residues from like the you know, when the British came to Ghana and they built the railway back in the late 1800s, there was a lot of infrastructure that was built with it. For instance, cabinets that were made for tools and parts of the trains to be stored in and all that. A lot of these cabinets were being dismantled and sold to like people who sell firewood and other things, and I'd collect them and then collect other materials and then recompose them and all that. So there are different forms. Sometimes you take elements, some of those elements, like archives, papers, and make drawings with them. Sometimes also you just put them together in order to be able to make like a much bigger installation, which becomes like an archive that children can visit, can learn about history from it. But then it also opens up forms with regards to how they think about art. Yeah.
So it means like you do, almost all these forms of arts put together, in different, ways.
Different ways. It depends on the exhibition. If I'm going to do a show in London and then I make a proposal that I want to do this work and this is what it takes, I make the work in that regard. If I'm going to do a show in Zurich or in Beijing and then I realize that I have to produce a work there, or there are some materials there that needs to be, I tell them that, I've done research and I realize that you have so and so and so and so in China. Can you collect those materials for me? I go there and then I use those materials to produce. So there have been instances where I've gone to places like the US and other places to produce artworks. And then after the exhibition, I have asked them to ship the works to me in Ghana. Or I pay for the shipping for the work to be brought here. Because it's so important with regards to looking at the legacy of your work. If you look at your work in the next 50 years, you don't want some of the most important aspects or moments of your lifetime in terms of your work to be in other countries. You want it to be here. Because when children here are growing up, it used to be that people say that, but here we don't have the infrastructure. So if the white people or people there can take care of it, why not give it to them? Why don't they keep it? Why not sell it to them? But we can also invest into the infrastructure here, like in the case of Red Clay, SEC, and all these other institutions. And then through this institution, the work becomes accessible to a whole new generation and multiple generations yet to come.
Let me take you back a little bit. You made mention of the fact that you were very good with drawings and all of that. But has it always been the case that you've always wanted to become an artist, just as you are today?
I don't know if I wanted to become an artist growing up. You know the stigma of me being an artist. You know, even my father sometimes say, when we're in tech those days, all the crazy guys were the guys who were doing art. It's true. But it's also true because artists tend to be very rebellious because we are always struggling. There's this inner struggle within us to try to push ideas, ideals and forms, imaginative forms and all that. And when everyone says that red, we say no, pink, or we say violet, or we're always going contrary to things. So for me, I had artistic tendencies, but I didn't really think that I could become an artist until I started studying art in secondary school and I realized that there's so much potential within it. But even that, it took me to go to the university and then afterwards to do my master's. Then I realized that, indeed, I really wanted to become an artist. Even from secondary school when I started studying art till after my undergrad, when I finished my undergrad, I didn't know if I wanted to become a full practicing artist. When I started my master's and I started reading books on philosophy, like started traveling, seeing exhibitions here and there, Because I remember first time when I went to Germany, I went to museums to see some exhibitions and other things. And I was like, really? I was like, we can also do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had certainly had this sense of courage.
Yeah.
But when you're here and you don't see those examples, it seems so far-fetched. But when I started seeing them in museums, and I was like, this I can also do it.
Yeah.
So I started having this courage. So it takes time.
And I think usually that's what gets a lot of young artists to, get into different things and live in the arts. Because myself, I'm smiling so much because I kind of, find myself in that same shoe. Because I was very good with drawings and all of that. Yeah. But I didn't want to do art. Because just as you said, there were a lot of people who, thought that artists were people who were lazy and weren't brilliant and intelligent.
Yes.
But I found my way into art and I loved it. Yeah. And I wanted to, go further. I remember, wanting to get into architecture, but I couldn't get it in KNUST. And now I find myself in video production and all of that. But just as you said, it's not always easy. Yeah. Can you take us through your journey as an artist? Like you've told us how you started, but how challenging was it for you to get through from secondary school to tertiary to your masters, and now you are a big artist a big name when it comes to art in the world?
Well, for me, the secret when I started studying arts from the beginning till now was always focusing on the work itself. I always tell people that the work is all you've got. And the content of the work, the form that the work takes, the integrity of the work. So in secondary school, I used to spend a lot of time in the evening making drawings, sketches. In the morning, I would go to class and then we'll paste it on a board and then we'll discuss. And all of our colleagues, how did you do this? How did you do that? How did you use this technique? Then we'll discuss. I did this, I did that. Tomorrow you see that, some other person will bring a drawing. Say, hey, Charlie, the guy, he beat Mahama. Then, Charlie, they meet you. I'm like, the next day you see. Then I will do something. So we used to do that. It was very good. Actually, it was a very good environment for that. Sometimes people think that competition, I want to be better than you. No. It wasn't about that. It was about pushing each other. Creating an environment which we could push each other. So even when I would use techniques that no one had explored, or some of my colleagues, I'm like, how did you do this? Can you teach me? Sometimes some of them would be like, no. I'm like, Charlie, now you too. What's up? But this thing, you're not going to go with it to your grave. So, I did this more. Then you go and explore, then you realize, Charlie, maybe the thing that you explored, you did it more. So that's why I also used to go to the painters' studios to learn and all that. And also exploring different techniques that were not even in the curriculum. Because when we're in secondary school, most people think that, we are just there to read the curriculum and pass. But no, you are building your future from there. And sometimes even things that you did from your childhood might be the thing that shapes your future, So I started looking at that format. University, I'll do the same thing. I would explore. I used to be like, I'm very good with like making portraits and things like that. So I'd make drawings for people. Someone will come to me, my girlfriend's birthday. Can you make a portrait for me? Charlie, comment. I'll make a drawing. Charlie, you pay me my money. I used to make those kinds of works. Or someone will I want you to make a picture of my girlfriend on a t-shirt. No problem.
Fast.
I used to make those. And I would use the money to buy materials to do my own experiment. Like, but you cry, why? What are you doing on the side? But that's what people didn't understand. Some of my colleagues back in the day, they thought that art was necessarily the talent that they had. Art is not the talent that you have. Art is what you make out of the talent that you have. What you create or you build out of it. Some people are very good with drawing. They can make interesting portraits and all that. But then you just can't make any portrait. What story are you telling with the portrait? Or what new techniques are you building out of the talent that you have that the world hasn't seen before? Or the world, it pushes a story or a narrative that the world... So that's what I was interested in, like opening up the loopholes or open up new possibilities within art. So I concentrated a lot on that. So when I finally finished uni and then I did my national service at the Autism Center in Accra, then I was exploring, doing these experiments, and I applied to the university with a portfolio with that. I was accepted. I went back, started a master's. Then, like experimenting here and there. And then, anytime there's an opportunity, I want to avail myself. when people come to the university, like foreigners or white people, artists, curators, and they're like, oh, we need some of the students to talk to them about their work, do a presentation. Some of the students are always afraid. Oh, I don't want to go and talk, and then I'll make a mistake, and then people will laugh at. No, me, I don't care.
Wow.
You didn't pay my school fees to come to school.
Yeah.
The one who paid my school fees.
Can laugh all you want.
Yeah, you can laugh all you want. Me, I don't care.
Yeah.
So I used to do a lot of presentations. I would even do a work. I'll bring it. I'll discuss it with my colleagues. Oh, I'm working on this thing. Blah blah blah.
Wow.
Charlie, sometimes I even go and borrow money from friends. I would use it to do an experiment. It didn't work. I will do something else, get the money, pay them.
Pay them back.
It's a risk. Art is a risk. If you're not willing to put in everything that you have into it and not think that you get anything back, you're not going to succeed.
Wow.
It's similar to the work that we are doing here now. Like just building the institution, producing things, putting it in it, even paying for buses to bring kids from secondary schools or primary schools to even come and witness these forms. It's a risk. But the risk is that it builds unforeseeable promises in the future. It's like you've cast a die into the future, and that produces things that you don't see. And that's what my childhood was about.
Wow. There are a lot of people who are just loving the passion and the effort you are putting into, make this place work. My next question is that after all these struggles and not knowing what, risking it and all of that, when did you finally get your big break as an artist?
Big break. In 2012, I went to Germany on a recommendation to do a residency. Ghana, we have one of our old, very important artists, Atu Delaki. He had a daughter, Esther Delaki, who had also studied at the University, K University. Both of them studied there. And she was teaching in America in a school, the Houston Baptist University. And then she came to visit Ghana. And she came to our university to present her work. Or someone who had studied in K University, now teaching in America. Oh, we're very excited. So normally they would do a lecture for the undergrads and then one for the master's student where they go more into detail because we are more specialized. And then they also asked us to present our works. So I presented my works to her. So they were interesting. There's an artist in Germany who does similar works. And then he teaches, sometimes comes to the university to teach. And then they organize this summer residencies in Germany. 1 month, artists go there and then they meet, they discuss ideas, they produce works. And he said, I would like to recommend you for that. And I said, oh, sure. I'd never traveled to do anything like that before. I remember the first time I traveled was to America when I was 20. But that I went to teach children in a summer camp. But this one was a professional thing. So I was like, hey, Charlie, can I do this? Why not? So actually I had to run around, borrow money here and there to raise the money to buy the tickets, blah, blah, blah. My father, at the time, things were very hard, but he tried. He got some money. So we got the things together. I went to Germany and it was amazing. Like seeing different things, artists, all these artists sitting down with them on a dinner table discussing ideas. There was even a funny idea one of the times. This town that I went to in Germany, Hilmsen, it was like a small town, like 80 people in the whole town. It was like a farming community.
Okay.
And the bigger town itself, they had like, let's say 500 to 1,000, a very small town.
Wow.
And to get there was like a journey, like in the middle of nowhere in Germany. And if I had to go and buy things from a grocery, I had to ride a bicycle through the farms, 5 kilometers to get there. Imagine riding a bicycle from here to like Kamina to just to buy like foodstuffs, come and cook. So our neighbor, the residency was an old farm which the artist had bought and made into a residency, an intellectual place. And the next door was a farm. And then our neighbor, you know how Germany also can be, something can be racist. So our neighbor's chicken got lost. And the neighbor came to our residency to come and file a complaint that his chicken was lost. And then he suspected that I had stolen the chicken.
Goodness.
It was so funny.
What?
And then the next suspect was the dog in the residence. We had a dog at the residence.
Wow.
Later on, told the guy that they had found the chicken. But of course,
already
the damage has already been done. So that was where I started meeting people, started building this courage, making new work. And then I was invited to participate in a big exhibition in London, in a big gallery there, which was called the Saatchi Gallery. Now they've sold it to another a business person. But at the time it was owned by a guy called Charles Saatchi. So the gallery was named after him, the Saatchi Gallery. He was one of the guys, he was into advertising. and he had invested a lot into art in the early 80s and 90s. He really, his investment into art really shot up a lot of British artists and all that. So he was known for like really making artists and all that. So when they invited me through a very good friend of mine to present my work in the exhibition, it really, a lot of people on the global stage just saw my work. I said, who is this artist from Ghana, blah, blah, blah. We've never seen his work. Yeah. And normally when you're a young artist, you need someone in the art world to like take you like a gatekeeper to... But it was like my work had just appeared. So like, but then we never knew about this guy. And I was invited from there to like one of the biggest, it's like the World Cup of Art exhibition. And at the time, I was the youngest guy in 120 years ever to be shown in the exhibition. And then also the first guy from Ghana, the youngest ever to be shown in the exhibition. It's like the World Cup. Everyone sees your work. And then once my work, and normally when your work is shown in there, you are like old, dying, or like you are an older person. So even when I was working, they invited me to that show, and I was there installing the work and everything. Everyone that bypassed me in the show, they thought that I was a worker. I was helping. So even artists would walk by past being like, "Oh, such great, like so great," because the work was so matured. They imagine that it was a young, because I was 26 at the time. They're like, "Oh, when is the artist coming?" And me too, I was saying that, he's coming when the exhibition is open, he will come. You know, there were only two artists. You know this artist, Steve McQueen, 12 years a slave. Yeah, he was one of the few people. He was also in the show. So he came up to me and he said that, "Oh, I really love your work." You know, so, and then because I knew his films and things like that. And I was like, "Oh, I really appreciate it." We had a conversation, blah, blah, blah. So he was giving him some advice. You know, and then some other artists also came up, a few others who also thought that it was my work. But most people actually thought that I was an assistant within that. And from there, it just kept going up and up and up and up. And since then, I showed in that exhibition more than 4 times, which maybe our predecessors, like mostly in Ghanaian art, they were never really invited to those exhibitions, also because of the form of the work and the format of the works that were being made in that generation.
Talking about people who, are not able to, get into the space and the limelight as easy as you had it. How difficult is it to become a relevant artist in Ghana?
Ghana, the problem that we have is the lack of resource and space. You know, it's also opportunity because you can imagine like just investing into Red Clay and all these institutions, what it has done and the possibilities that it has opened up over the years. There are a lot of artists who are very, very good, very talented, but they just need context for their work. And sometimes, for me, when I was starting up, we had to create the context for our work. But it's not every artist that can be able to create and build that context for their work, because it takes a lot of work. It's a work in itself. But then, to be able to invest into institutions that opens up opportunities for artists to be able to exhibit their work, to be able to think about the possible forms that their work can take, both intellectually and materially, politically and all that, it's another thing in itself. So it's I will say that it's difficult here. Because even like if you're an artist here trying to do things, there is literally no support. Like even when we're talking about visual arts, that's one thing. Even look at music in itself. Maybe aside NAFTI, where maybe they have the old studios or Ghana Television or things like that, we don't even have a national recording studio. We should have had studios in different regions and all that, where artists can just go, like if you're a young artist, just to experiment on your sound, your music, things like that. Where artists can actually go to experiment without actually the pressure of thinking we have to succeed. When you are in that zone of actually just experimenting without thinking that you have to succeed, there is a possibility that you'll succeed rather than when you want to succeed. When you want to succeed and you just throw everything financially and all that into a basket, mostly when it doesn't work, it demoralizes you. But when you're just experimenting, you're in a community of people that are just experimenting, doing things here and there, like the art school in Kumasi, where you're just experimenting. Oh, this works, this doesn't work. Or the thing that works, you amplify it a lot more. The one that doesn't work, you borrow some element from it that work, and then you try it in different ways and all that. We need spaces for experimentation. That is the thing that opens up like an ecosystem with regards to any art scene in anywhere in the world.
Now let's talk about the big project, Red Clay. A lot of people are talking about Red Clay, and I know a lot of people are excited about this place. why did you decide to put in a lot of money to build an edifice like this? What is your reason behind it?
Till now, when I think about it, it even still baffles me that I made that decision. In the art school, we had a mentor, still my mentor, Caricature. He was one of the guys who had studied in Kumasi in the art school, but thought that art could be much bigger than it is, opened up possibilities in it, started teaching philosophy and other things in a university that opened up all these Pandora boxes and all that. And he and I used to talk about the idea that it's important to think about building a studio, for instance, where you come from. If you're coming from a village somewhere, why not build up an art institution there? Think about what possibilities that could hold and all that. So when I had the chance in 2014, when I did that first show in London, they bought the work. And then the money, I was like, what? Because I was young, I was like, all this money, what do I do with it? And then I discussed with my father, can I build a studio in Tamale? And my father said, yes, I'll be very happy to support you because he's a contractor. So he'll help us to build and all that. So I invested the money into like buying materials, blah, blah, blah. We started making the drawings and then we started building the studio. That became SCCA, the Savannah Center, later. And then that same year, they were selling this land here, Red Clay. And at the time, they had sold all the land, but there was a small portion of land, 2.5 acres left, which was a deformed land that people didn't want to buy. So my sister told me that, why not buy it? And I said, okay, fine, I'll buy it and see what I do with it. So when I bought it, a few months later, I said, okay, why not build a studio here? So I started talking to Caricature, and then one of his friends, Dota, Ajimanosei, one of the halls is even named after him. And we started thinking about the ideas of using bricks to build because of the local architecture, the mud architecture. Also, the soil here is red because of the history of iron ore and the production of spears here in the past in relation to the traditional and colonial history, blah, 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 things like that. So, okay, one day I was listening to a song, Red Clay, by Yusuf Indo, on his album From Village to Town. And I said, it sounds like a great name for a studio. So I named it Red Clay. But this was years after when we had started a building. The name came in 2020, but the building itself started in 2015. Yeah.
Wow. So like right now, what is the scope of Red Clay now?
Well, Red Clay, in terms of scope, there are so many things happening here. But at least the primary focus of Red Clay was for it to be a studio, an artist studio that presents all these possibilities. For instance, we have these archives here that we also use for educational purposes, aside artistic purposes. They are artworks in themselves. We have the Parliament of Ghosts, where we use for film screenings, lectures, talks, and all kinds of other things. We have an archaeological museum at the back called the Bensaibu Archaeological Museum, which currently is hosting like the work capital corpses with the sewing machines. And we're also using it for storage, but later we will find other artworks also in there until it becomes like a full archaeological museum. We're actually collaborating with the archaeology department at the University of Ghana for that.
Okay.
We have the Ajimanosei Hall, which we have the permanent collection. Some of the artworks that I've done in the past, which are in prominent museums around the world, but we've kept copies of those works here, which is also for like generations and generations yet to come. We have a cinema hall that we are currently working on, that when we are done, we can use it for young people can come and have talks and forums there. We'll have bigger audience and smaller audience, things like that. We'll have a library space for children, for people can sit, use a computer, watch videos, films, old films, things like that. Photography studio, which we're also working on. Analog photography, silver gelatin prints, where people can learn about older techniques, ways to construct photographs, things like that. We have a greenhouse that, it's a greenhouse that was developed out of the idea of the Parliament of Ghosts, which is a greenhouse where we're growing spices or flowers which are mostly not common and almost going extinct. Some of these you can find them in villages and all that. So the idea is to use the greenhouse as a way to revive, because of course my practice involves a lot of revival in objects and things like that, like the planes, the trains and all that. So the idea is to revive these things through that. And also there is an amphitheater incorporated within the greenhouse, which allows for us to be able to use the place for fashion shows, for lectures, classrooms, things like that. And then also we are developing like independent like kitchens here, also that we can go into like food experimentation, things like that, cooking ideas and all that. And then we have the trains. Some of them are going to be used for classrooms. Some of them are going to be used for like accommodation spaces. Some of them are going to be used as we're going to build a kitchen in one of them. And then the airplanes also used as classrooms, living spaces, others. And then we have the residence blocks, which have, they are supposed to be spaces where in the future, when artists can come and do residencies here, you can come and stay here for some time, but you don't have to pay anything. What you have to pay with is your time doing workshops with school kids in schools or communities, things like that. The idea that we can be able to combine physics, mathematics, arts, technologies, and other things. And we have the trains, which is going to run eventually. Currently, we have it where from time to time we do these performances where we use manual labor to move the train from one place to the other. But in the future, we're going to have a working train that is going to run in the landscape and then go around in circle. And then there's going to be an art school combined with architecture, music, and other things. So that space we're yet to build. And I think maybe towards the end of the year, I'm thinking we can start building that space. So the idea is that we'll have an art school where we can, in the future, we can start admitting students on a higher level. Maybe we can start with a master PhD program or just a master program where we can admit students from all around the world, but focusing on the continent where artists can come together, architects, engineers, to do like courses together where they can share ideas and forms, things like that. So the idea is that eventually this space is supposed to grow and then become something even much bigger than what I imagine it to be. The land is there because I've been buying land bit by bit for my neighbors, and also I bought some from the chiefs, things like that. So the idea is to be able to have it across different spaces. And lastly, we also have these forest areas that historically were used in burying the chiefs and all that, the sacred groves. So I also bought some of those spaces across the communities. So the idea is to be able to extend the idea of the art school into those spaces where we can teach children in these forest areas and all that. And also build our own brick factory where we can produce our own materials in order to be able to build some of these endless institutions that we are embarking on.
I mean, it's a big and great idea. How much has it cost you? I mean, to like put all of this together? Do you have a lot of money?
A lot. Millions, actually, millions. Yeah. Sometimes you really don't think about it because when I travel to teach or whatever, when I'm paid, that's the money that I pour into it. Yeah, it's cost a lot, millions, several millions. Yeah, since it's been 8 years since I've been working on this, and because I'm doing it because it's almost like a gift to the community and the world around us. So I really don't think about it. I live here actually, but you ask yourself how much we are sitting on furniture that I my indoor furniture. You know, so for me, I don't need a lot to live. Yeah, I need very little, but it's more or less about what you build. Because when you're young, there are things and ideas that you can engage yourself in that when you're older you cannot. People always have to realize that when you're young, that's when you can actually fail and then try again, fail until you succeed. But when you're older and then you've succeeded in something, you're not willing to risk everything to fail. But when you're young, you can do it because you can try again and again and again. And that's the gift that we have and we can share with the world.
Wow. Is that the reason why coming here is free of charge?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, that's the whole point of it. Because it's supposed to be accessible, that anyone can get access to it. People sometimes will come here last time I hosted a group of people here around 9 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah, there were like medical doctors who had come here to they were doing this community outreach. So every day they are busy going to like places doing like liver, kidney checks, blah, blah, blah. So in the daytime they couldn't come and they called me and said, oh, please, we really want to come. Can we come in the night? I said, sure. Come. This was like 3 days before my wedding.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, just recently.
Yeah, even the day before my wedding, I was taking people on the tour. Yeah, so the only day I didn't work this whole year was my wedding day. Aside that every other day.
Every day. Amazing. Amazing. Tell us a little about the Parliament of Ghosts. Where's that idea from?
The Parliament was developed as an idea for a project I did in Manchester in 2019. An institution in Manchester called the Manchester International Art Festival. There was a museum in Manchester called the With Art Gallery hosted that exhibition. And it was actually very interesting because at the time Brexit had just happened and I wanted to produce a work that also responded, a critique to it. And a lot of the old railway infrastructure was built by the British and all that. So I'd been collecting them over time, the cabinets and all that. So I proposed, why not build a parliamentary form as an exhibition where young people can come and sit, discuss debates and ideas. Like they can debate, discuss ideas, do all kinds of things. People were using it for fashion shows and all that. There's a huge Pakistani community in Manchester. So some of the Pakistani women used it for their fashion shows. So it was a museum where people could come sit, discuss ideas. It was a place like here for everyone. So people really used it. So afterwards, I had gone to America, Chicago to work on a project, went to Texas to work on this other project, which is here now. And then when I came back home, COVID was just beginning to develop. And I asked myself, why not build a parliament as an architectural form here in Tamale? So at the time, all the land where the parliament seat is on was still my neighbor's land. Wow. So I started talking to them about the possibilities of buying the land, started convincing them, buying the lands little by little, and then started building the parliament. So the parliament literally, it's called a parliament of ghosts because the idea of the ghost is not, ghosts, we always think of ghosts as something that is related to a soul that has departed the body. But the idea of a ghost can also be an idea, an apparition, something from the future, a gift or a message from the future. Sometimes there is something you have to do that you haven't done yet, but it keeps haunting you. I have to do this. It hasn't happened yet, but the idea of the thing not happening yet is haunting you. That could be a ghost. There are some group of kids here that I asked them what they thought a ghost was, and one of them said a ghost is a spirit that has refused to depart the earth. And I thought it was interesting. Yeah, because the idea of a spirit which hasn't departed, either one that is manifested or yet to manifest. But I thought that the idea of the ghost could be like a gift. Because normally when you have a parliamentary space, there are living bodies that sit in those spaces to discuss ideas. But I wanted a space, a parliament of ghosts, that could just function by itself. A place where we could host all kinds of ideas and objects and forms. So sometimes you come there, you realize that we've planted corn in the parliament. Sometimes you come there, there are old chairs in it. Sometimes there are old planes in seats in it. Sometimes there are fuel pumps in it. So the idea is the parliament of ghosts. The things that we thought were dead, that in a way, they still possess life that are speaking to us. When they converge in such a space, did you ever wonder when the scrapyard, what happens between the objects that are there? Because the same entity that created us, God, is a manifestation. All the things that we see around us are manifestations of God. Metal, everything. God created everything. So truly nothing ever dies. Everything has a spirit within it. It only changes from one state to the other. It's like the thing that they say, the matter never really disappears, but only changes from one thing. Ice will become water will become vapor will become water again, will condense, will become water. So things like that. So I'm really interested in all these ideas and how the element of ghost is translated within all these forms.
Amazing. Let's talk a little about the airplanes. I saw when they were coming to Tamale, and it was a whole lot of, excitement and all of that. How many airplanes are there?
We have 6 planes here now. And then we have another smaller airplane that was made by these 2 brothers in Accra called the Wright brothers. And I have also another plane in Accra, one of the old Ghana Airways planes. I haven't brought it here yet because that place is humongous. So I'm still thinking about ways in which it can be transported. I have an uncle of mine, Uncle Issa. He's very good. He's the one who's helped us transport all the planes, the trains and everything here. So normally we have to work together to be able to find the best way to make this transportation happen. Yes, so yeah.
I watched in one of your interviews where you were, mentioning how much it cost you to, get all of those airplanes. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, they were expensive because, most of these planes, the airlines, the planes here, everything has to do with like foreign currency, USD. So when Starbow went bankrupt, they sold the planes to different people as scrap material because the planes had been sitting in the airport for several years. So I followed up on the people that had bought those planes, and I bought the planes from them. CityLink had 2 planes. One of the first ones that was used in Ghana, I bought that plane from the owner himself, and then the other one also that was used in training pilots. And there was also one old airplane that was an old Polish airplane that was modeled after the Second World War planes, the Antonov. and then there was this white guy, Uli, who was he brought it to Ghana to fly as a hobby. You know, it's not in Ghana. It's not common to find someone who has a plane. Like imagine go to Tamale Airport and someone has a plane parked there. Once every week he comes to fly it around and just comes to land. That's a hobby. Ghana is not common. So when he brought the plane to fly, and particularly this plane, it's like going to buy like an old Mercedes or something just to drive for fun, like the old Mercedes that I use.
Yes.
But I use it as like I was supposed to use it for like once in a while, but now I use it as my main means of transport. You know. It's not so common. So when he brought the plane, the civil aviation thought that the plane was not safe for the airspace. So they didn't want to give him the permit. He got a temporary permit to fly it for 6 months, and afterwards it had been parked at the airport for many years. So when I spoke to him, when I met him, convinced him, spoke to him, he was very excited that a young person was interested in this plane because everyone thought it was like a rickety, ugly airplane. So he was the one, he helped us to dismantle the plane at the airport. We brought it here. One of the guys that even helped us to dismantle the plane is called Steve. He was his assistant. He was the guy that was just talking to outside. So he and Uli came to Tamale. We flew them to Tamale. They came, the plane was here. After we had transported them by road to Tamale, then they came to assemble the entire airplane. And then we also had some other engineers, and Mr. Siedu and others who came from Accra to help us assemble all the aircraft after we had taken all of them apart.
But can you are there some how do you call it, history or reasons why you chose certain airplanes, or those were the only ones available for purchase?
No, not really. These were not the planes I was interested in initially. The planes I was interested in was the old Fokkers Dutch airplanes that the government had used before. They had been used by the military. You know those, they say, Air Force, we're coming to Tamale. Some of the old planes, those planes, really interesting airplanes because of the shape and all that. But I'd seen in the newspaper that they were selling some of those planes, and I applied several times, but for some reason, my letter always got missing when it went to the Flagstaff. They always said that, the chief of staff has to sign, blah, blah. So at some point, I got tired, frustrated, and someone said, but there's some planes also parked at Kotoka. Those are privately owned. Maybe you should find the people. So one of the engineers at Kotoka, who had been servicing some of the old airplanes when they were active, he knew them. So he started negotiating, finding those people. And then we bought all those planes over time, over a 3-year period. And then we, even to get the permits to transport them to Tamale, to get them out of the airport was a whole procedure. It took almost a year just to get the permit, for them just to open the gate for us to take the planes from the airport. Because when the planes were active, they were owing the airport, the Ghana Airport Company,
some
money. You know, when planes land, when they taxi, the tower, they give them directions. When all those things, they were owing them fees. So when I asked them how much, they said the cumulative fees was $1 million. And I said, what? I said, what? And how much did I buy these planes for? Cumulatively, all the planes I bought, it was like almost 120,000 USD.
And all of them.
Yes. But to transport them here, it cost like the same amount and double to even assemble, blah, blah, blah. So in the end, it was very expensive to do that. The buying is not the issue, but it's the transporting, assembling, deassembling, things like that. So I was like, what? If I had that kind of money, do you think I'll be sitting here talking to you? You know? So we had to be very patient, following slowly until we were able to reach a deal of paying a certain amount for. It was very, very hectic.
Wow, that's stressful. That must be stressful. Which aside Red Clay, I know of the other centers. Can you tell us a little about them? SCCA and then
Nkrumah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. SCCA was the first space built here in 2014. We opened it in 2019 with the first exhibition. And SCCA is actually a space for exhibitions, retrospectives. So we normally work with older artists and then their lifetime work. A lot of them are artists who have died and then no one knows their work, things like that. So the exhibition is a way of opening up their work that they've done before to a whole new generation of young people. So we do exhibitions there. And sometimes we also collaborate with other galleries or spaces around the world, and we host other exhibitions there. Nkrumah Volny was an old building built in the 60s that was abandoned in 1966 when Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown. And it's called Nkrumah Volny because at the time when we were building it, there was a propaganda that Nkrumah was building this place as a nuclear bunker and also a prison, a detention center for his political opponent.
Wow.
So no one wanted to have anything to do with the building. They poured tons of sand into it over time because women and children used to go and fetch water there because it was an underground building and water was accumulating there. And there was a couple of incidences where people drowned in the building.
Wow.
Going to fetch water. So they thought the building was cursed. So they called it Nkrumah Volny. So no one went there. So during COVID, they were selling the building. And I was, as part of my PhD, I was doing research on this building. And I offered to buy it. Wow. So I made a proposal to the Lands Commission and they accepted. And I bought the building from them. And then we started cleaning the building and realized that there was a huge ecosystem in the building. There were bats living in the building, frogs, fishes. There were some snakes in the building because people used to say that there were some huge snakes living in the building that used to come out and catch their sheep and blah, blah, blah. But when we went in the building, there were no sheep. So we had to clean out the building and leave some of the ecosystems there and then find out ways in which we could convert it into a cultural institution. So today, kids can go there and visit the place, read, learn, see exhibitions without the fear of going there to fall in the water to drown and things like that. So I'm really interested in the history that is possessed within this building and what it offers to the city and also generations that are yet to be born.
What's your most successful exhibition so far?
I've had so many successful exhibitions. Recently, I did a show in Germany in a city called Osnabrück, which I commissioned some weavers here to make the smocks in large quantities. And then we covered a building in a German city, Osnabrück, with it in relation to the history of the city and everything. I did a project in Ghana here in 2015, early 16, called the Exchange Exchanger, where I covered all the buildings, the residential halls in KNUST with these jute sacks.
Jute sacks,
It was a very difficult work. And also covered the National Theatre and a couple of other project spaces, the Silo in Accra and a couple of other spaces. It was a very difficult work. I think that was one of the most successful works that I ever did because we had to coordinate everything here locally. Normally when you're doing foreign projects, there are people that help you coordinate things. But to do things here and to coordinate that's one thing. But also the idea of building this institution, Red Clay, SCC and everything, has been one of the most successful and difficult things. Because to be able to build this and to coordinate all of this, it's not easy. And then lastly, also bringing the trains and the planes here from Accra. Sometimes when I sit down and when I look at them, I'm like, wow, we actually did this. Because the kind of things we had to go through to get these objects here. Even the trains alone, it took 10 years from the time I became interested in it to get in the first 10 years. Because I was a student when I started, when I came up with this idea to get the trains and bring them, 2013.
Wow.
And we only brought the trains to Tamale in January 2023. It took 10 years negotiating, going back and forth.
Wow.
10 years. Yeah, so it's a lot of work.
Wow.
Sometimes people just see things and they think that, the artist, he doesn't know what to do, it's his money and blah, blah. No, everything is carefully coordinated. For me, if it takes 20 years to get something done, I will do it because I know what the potential of it lies.
You made mention of the dropping of the jute sacks around. Was it a concept that you came up with or is something that you got from somewhere?
Well, when I was in art school, we had been reading on different artists, and there was an artist, Christo and Jean-Claude. There were a couple artists, that they would drape different buildings, spaces, landscapes with different materials, but they were like these industrial materials. Whereas in my case, I was looking at using materials that had been used on the body, like the smocks, jute sacks used in transporting food, charcoal, the stain in it, the scar, and all these things. Thinking about ways in which we could bring that into art, open up the conversations of art within our context in our region. So I started negotiating with people in market spaces to find out ways in which we produce art that could be that somehow suited to the local context and all that. So that's where the idea started coming from. And then in time, reading about other artists like Ella Natri, Yinka Shunibari, many artists around the world, even modernist artists, Warhol, Smithson, a lot of artists, like very prominent artists, those who've died and those who are still alive, thinking about the forms. And then I started thinking about possibilities of expanding these ideas, and then it really got us to this point that we are today.
How long did it take you to do the one in Accra? The
National Theatre.
Yeah, National, yeah.
That project, I had been working on it for 2 years.
Wow.
But the actual draping of the building took 3 days. We did a lot of coordination. My studio assistant at the time, and now I still work with closely, Benjamin Okante, he helped to coordinate a lot of that. And we worked with a lot of people like the Shoeshine Boys, some Trot Road mates, Kayes and all that. But also because I'd spent a lot of time going back and forth, photographing the building, looking at where the light comes from, where the sun sets, the wind, blah, blah, blah. We got access to the roof where we're going to drape the material from. We rented a crane to lift the materials to the roof. Normally, when you're doing a project abroad, like in Germany and other places, it takes several months just to get things done because of all the bureaucracies. Sometimes, like recently, the project we did in Osnabrück, there was one we did in Germany like 5 years ago that they needed us to connect some pipes to a pump. And the pump needed to have a certain pressure. And the pressure wasn't there. So they had to rent a pump from Switzerland. And the pump was like 600 euros a day just to rent the pump for the period of the exhibition. By the time the exhibition was done, they had spent like thousands of euros just for that. Recently, when we did the show in Germany, some people, conservatives, went online saying that they were going to burn the work, but they don't understand why the city has spent over 300,000 euros to commission an artist and also like to pay for like services for them to bring like these materials from Ghana to drape a building. When, you know, a lot of the old buildings in Germany, like the old department stores, they are closing down because of Amazon and all that. People don't go to stores to buy things anymore. So that was a building that we're draping. So there was something really, there was a pain in the hearts and memories of people that seeing this work also really annoyed them. So they didn't want that to happen. So the city was afraid. So they had to put security measures in place. So they had to pay for a security company to guard the building throughout the period of the exhibition. And it cost them over 120,000 euros just to be able to guard the work. And that was budget that was not part of the work.
That's a lot.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, let's come to your work. What is the highest value you've been paid for your art, your work, your artwork?
Well, it depends on it. Sometimes the work is fragmented. You know, maybe you do like a project and then there are fragments of the work that are maybe exhibited in different galleries around the world, sold to some museums. And when, even as an artist, when you sell your work, it's like being a footballer and having an agent. You don't get all the money. You mostly get like half of it. After you get this, like sometimes there's a huge discount that is given to the museum. Sometimes 20%, 40%, sometimes, and then you get half of the money. And then when you get half of the money, what do you do with it? You build something like this. So, but there was a work that I did, non-rentable, in Cancer. There were different versions of it. Cumulatively, it was like $1 million or so USD.
Dollars. Wow.
So that was why that article came. The artist that sold, but you don't get that million. By the time you get the money, Charlie, it's way below. It's way below even half of it. But then the idea is, for me, it's never really been about the full value of the work. It's even when you get like 10% of the money, what do you do with it? For instance, we have a lot of employees here. We have to pay. We have to expand the institution. We have to build the art school. We have to bring kids from the schools for workshops, programs, all these things.
What can we do, or what do you think needs to be done for a lot of Ghanaian artists to be able to become successful in art?
I think we just need to invest more in the ecosystem. Yeah, we need to invest without any aim of return. Immediate return. That's the problem. We're always thinking, when we invest in something, we have to get the returns immediately. No, we have to be patient. We have to wait. There are a lot of artists who there's so much talent out there, and people just need an opportunity, a space, a conducive space where they can practice without any sense of thinking that if things don't work out, they are going to be in bankruptcy or things like that. We need to create those spaces.
And I think we actually become more creative when we are free to
Exactly.
to create. Yeah.
Exactly.
Would you say your childhood has influenced what or who you've become today in any way?
Yeah, I would say yes, because when I was growing up, like my father is a contractor. When you go into a house, there are tractors everywhere.
yeah.
We used to play in some of those tractors. In Accra, when we moved to Accra with my mom, we were staying with my grandparents in Adabraka at an old mechanic shop. And there were cars there. I used to play in the cars and all that scrap. It was like a scrap yard.
Yeah.
And growing up, being interested in like toys, cars, planes, things like that, it really influenced the way I imagined the world in terms of looking at objects, things like that. Of course, as I started growing, I realized that it was much bigger. So I had to really increase that. And yeah, so certainly I think that my childhood, going to boarding school, being independent at a young age, from the age of 5, having to take care of yourself, all those things really contributed largely to the way that I thought about the world.
Have you ever, encountered any hindrance just because of the fact that you are a northerner?
Always, my God. Being a Ghanaian is difficult enough. And being a northerner is super difficult enough.
Wow.
It's almost impossible to get any kind of support.
Wow.
Sometimes, of course, there are a lot of good people that you meet. Like like the planes, for instance. When we were trying to get them here, we spent so much time going back and forth. It wasn't getting anywhere. There is a local businessman and someone in politics here. I wouldn't mention his name.
Yeah, that's fine.
He was the one who had to step in order to be able to help. Because of my father also, sometimes people said, this guy is NDC, these people, they're NDC people. So even when like you're trying to get a favor, because all the time that I was trying to do it was within this administration. So people said, because he's from the other side. But this guy that helped us, he was an MPP guy. Yeah, so it didn't really matter to him. For him, he was more interested in the ideas and the fact that I was a young person that was doing something that he just wanted to support. Recently, also regarding the trains, when I wanted to bring the trains here for several years, it wasn't working out. The guy who actually helped us to make the breakthrough was someone who was in politics, who was in the South. But there were people in politics from here that I had been chasing that were not interested in helping, that didn't even want to hear what I wanted to say.
To do with it.
So it's a matter of who you meet and whether they are interested in the ideas that you're working with or not. So sometimes people will say that, but we have to stick to. Yes, it's true that as Northerners, we have to stick together and all that. But I think that we also have to open up ourselves to people from all the kinds of places.
Exactly.
Yeah. Someone from the Volta region could be the reason why something happens here.
Exactly.
Someone from the Upper East could be the reason why something happens here.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm really open-minded about the world when it comes to these things and what possibilities there are.
How and let's talk about the trains a little bit. Were they all coming from the same place, or you had to pick them from different regions?
They were coming from different places.
Okay.
So in the Gold Coast era, they had built a railway in very different places: Takwa, Obuasi, Huni Valley, Kumasi, Nsawam. Kotoku, like so many different places, Accra, Tema. So some of the trains were in Tema, but I couldn't get some of those coaches. I'm still pursuing some of those. So, but the ones that we got some of them from Nsawam in Accra.
Okay.
We got some of them from Sekendi, some of them from Takrade, and then we got some of them from Huni Valley. Yeah, so they were coming from different places. So we had to coordinate. My very good friend OBL, we were working with him, so I commissioned OBL to go and film some of the trains that were coming from one place.
Yes.
And then also I was tackling the filming from another place. And then we all met in Kumasi and then we did the filming together to get to Tamale. Then he continued to come and film here. So we've worked with him in very different capacities also.
Amazing. I know what a lot of the things that are happening here, but I know there are a lot of people who are not aware. How has, especially with regards to the community, you've made mention of how much, your work, you want your work to influence the community and all of that. So how would you say this whole, things that you are putting together, how would you say it has impacted the community? Because I see a lot of children who come around and they wouldn't have seen an aeroplane before, but they come here and then they see, they are excited. How does it influence their being as children? How does it affect them growing up into becoming people who would make the community a better place? Who will be change makers in the community?
You know, when I was a child in boarding school, our school took us on a school trip to the art center in Accra. And I saw a play by Legon Presec Boys. It was so inspiring. That play is still on my mind. It's still in my mind. It still plays till date. I think I was like 9 years at the time. And when I went back to school, I was so excited that I joined the drama group and I started doing acting here and there. And that was one of the things. When I went to uni, I did acting for 3 years and all that. And I met the guys from Legon, Nyansapo, Foster Romanos, Clemento Suarez, those guys. Yeah, when we're in, because we're in the same year group. So I was very interested in acting in that regard. You know, that play that I saw as a child really changed my perception about, like, with regards to arts, culture, things like that. So that's what this space is supposed to be. But just that the airplanes, the trains, they're supposed to introduce the children also to technological forms. Past, present, future. Drones, we've been teaching the kids drone tech in the planes, in the trains. We teach them coding, how to build computers. Sometimes we do robotics workshops. We do all kinds of things, workshops and other things in here. The idea is that when a child comes to see these planes, when they learn about like technological forms within them, when they sit in the Parliament of Ghosts to listen to lectures, when they see permanent exhibitions, when they see artist videos, when they use the library and all that, it opens up the possibilities of what they can become in the future. That is very important. The possibilities of what can become in the future. A lot of them are coming from farming communities where their parents are farmers. And a lot of them might grow up to become farmers. But the idea is that what kind of farmers do they become? Do they become the same farmers that are using old tractors and plow? Or they become engineers where they design new farming techniques, blah, 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 things like that. That's why we even have the greenhouse here. The idea of extending the possibilities of what art or what cultural forms and values could be through architecture and all kinds of other things. So it's a possibility of imagination.
And just like you, that could change a lot for some of these children who like if they hadn't been here would have just gone back to be farmers just like their fathers. And I must say, like, I appreciate so much the vision, especially for children, because the North we find ourselves in a place where it is already difficult, as you said earlier on, where you'd have to fight on your own. But this, I think, makes it a little bit easier for you to be able to know that, okay, this is possible. Opening, a lot of, opportunities and imaginations for you to be able to think and, get into the future, even from your own, community. And we must thank you so much for, all you are doing for the community and all of that. Now, let me ask you this. If you weren't an artist, what would you have been?
That's a difficult one. Now I've gotten so much into the mindset of being an artist. But I know growing up, I wanted to be a pilot.
Oh, okay.
So I bought a plane.
Okay.
These days I've been, I know. These days I've been talking to, I also wanted to become an architect, but went into arts. And these days I work with architects. I even did a show. I participated in the Venice Architecture Biennial, the World Cup I was talking about. They have an architecture version, which I have a work in currently. So I even the one of the pilots that trains most of the pilots that fly Africa World and others. He was the guy that established CityLink that I bought the old planes from, which are here. Yes. So I once talked to him about actually learning how to fly in Accra with him. It's like a 6 months intense program or something, which at some point I think that I'm going to embark on. Not to become a pilot, but in the future I think that I might just want to do it as a hobby.
I like asking these questions when I'm interviewing people like you about the role of parents in what we become. How has your parents, you mentioned your dad a couple of times, how instrumental were they in, you becoming successful as an artist?
Oh, top. Like 500%. My father, when I was in high school, like he used to give me money to buy materials that in the memory of high schoolers didn't exist. There was a shop in Accra called Mess Equipment. And I used to go there just to go and buy, what's the name? Like oil paint, like the kind of oil paints that were used in painting the Mona Lisas and things like that. Old masters, quality. acrylic, gouache, charcoal.
Wow.
So I started experimenting with materials that when I was in
Your
secondary
peers
school, my
were
peers
not
didn't even know that they
know
existed.
about. Yeah.
But through my experimentation, they started knowing. Sometimes some of them even used to laugh at me. Oh, I'm doing things that are non fire. It will not come in the exams. But
they didn't know.
I knew what I was doing, you know, because I always told my father that I wouldn't want to go to the university and then I'll be struggling to learn certain things. I want to learn these things before I go, because a lot of the teachers that were teaching us in secondary school were the same people that had gone to study in the same university. So they knew the curriculum and all that. So my father, top guy.
Wow.
And he an engineer.
Wow.
But like two of my brothers are into construction, and one of them is a neurosurgeon who trained in Cuba.
Wow.
So like, why not? Why? But you also want like, but the idea that one of the boys, like, why not art? You know, it's not very common. But then all these possibilities were there, and also my father used to say that he still says it when we're in school. All the crazy guys were the artists. But nonetheless, he still thought that there was a chance for his son to practice art. Of course, maybe I make art now that he didn't think that was the art that I would produce. But that's something different. And my mom, my God, in Accra, when I came back home, I would bring all my paintings and then I would just come and store it in the house, hang it everywhere. Wow. So at some point, they grew tired of me drawing everywhere, that they created a small space for me to be able to make my work in. And the nude drawings I was talking about, I used to also have like people that would come and pose for me nude to make these sculptures and all that. And because, you know, we are coming from an Islamic background. Someone might say, oh, in Islam is... They didn't mind. Like, you know, and when you come to Accra, all those works are still in the house. I kept all my early works. So my parents, even the idea to accommodate everything that I was producing, because I knew countless number of students, like colleagues of mine, when school vacated, they couldn't take their works home. Because some of them, they were even hiding doing the arts in school. Because their parents didn't know they were doing arts. They thought they were doing business or something. Because sometimes when their parents come to parents' friends come to at home, and they're like, oh, what's your son doing? And they say, oh, I'm doing fine art. Sometimes they read it as finance. Oh, yeah, you are doing finance. Oh, you know. So, and then they're like, oh, yes. Then they also play along. So no one wanted to believe that their friends' children will study art as a program in school. But for me, my brothers and everything, they were also supportive. Sometimes, of course, they would laugh at me here and there. But nonetheless, no one would ever take your work and burn it or things like that. Whereas in the case of other people, they couldn't take their works home because their parents would burn their works. Or no. So a role as a parent is very, very important in terms of how you instill hope in your children.
And I'm very happy about this question, because in Tamale, quite recently, I mean, there have been a lot of things happening, especially with young people, youth, I mean, getting into drugs and all of that. So I always want to hear how parents have influenced their children to become great people. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do much with your children, they'll just turn up how, I mean, you know, they can. You know, so I'm very excited. Your dad was very much.
But some children are just also, children, I'm sorry, are also just fucked up.
Exactly.
They will just, no matter how much you pour into them also, things like that will just also still happen.
Yes.
But it's how you manage it also. So that is very important. Yeah.
Let's get back to our conversation. Who inspires you as an artist?
For me, everyone.
Everyone.
Teachers, artists, scientists. When I was in art school, I used to read a lot on different artists. And some of the artists, in terms of what they had to go through to produce their works, even like experimentation and all that, was very interesting. When I was in school also, there were teachers who used to sacrifice a lot. And still, they are the ones teaching in the art schools. They really inspired us a lot with regards to how they were teaching, the models that they were using to teach us and all that. That inspired me to want to do what I do today. And still, when I have ideas, I still rely on a lot of them. Colleagues, people who are around you that you have ideas, you talk to, like the artistic director for SCCA, Salam Koji. We were classmates in uni. And we used to talk a lot about ideas, things like that. And they were people that used to inspire me a lot. So when we started building the institution, I went back to him and I said, hey, look, we're doing this. Can we work together on this project? Teachers working on this project here, some of the teachers here have been some of the most inspiring people. We have some of these teachers from Kumbungu who have been bringing their students here. And some of them, sometimes they even contribute their own salaries to buy uniforms for their school kids. You know, And you look at how much do you earn, and then the trouble they have to go through. Some of their classrooms, they don't have furniture. The classroom is like a crater site. It's like you've gone to Mars or something like that. But the amount of commitment. So there's so many inspirational points from different areas, and for me, why not?
What would you have changed in your journey to becoming, the top artist you are today?
I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything. I'm very grateful for the life that I've gotten. I think that I would tell my younger self to be a bit more relaxed and chilled. Sometimes I think I work a bit too much. I would tell myself just to relax. Now even I would tell myself to relax, but I literally cannot relax.
Can you?
I can't. You know. So yeah. So I wouldn't change much. Yeah.
I know my 8-year-old son and my 15-year-old brother. I mean, hearing this conversation and hearing about you would want to be, if not bigger than Ibrahim Mahama, but like Ibrahim Mahama. How does he go about it? How, like, there are a lot of these young artists who just see the goal, but it's very difficult to, get to the goal. What is your advice for young artists, probably still in maybe primary school, in senior high school? They because my time, I actually didn't know that art could be this profitable. A lot of people taught artists after school, all you could do is become a painter. And all of that. I would like you to tell these, young ones something, because it's coming from you would mean something else to them.
Well, I think that's, I said in the beginning that you have to have a goal in mind and stick to it. And don't be distracted by many things that happen around you. If you think that you want to become, let's say, an artist one day that makes exhibitions and things like that, just stick to that idea. And don't let much distract you, but always be willing and open to learn many different things. If you're in school, sometimes people say, oh, but I'm in visual, I want to become an artist one day. I don't need mathematics or science. No. But today, some of the most important artists in the world are scientists or are mathematicians.
I actually skipped chemistry.
Exactly. When I was in school, my father used to pay for me to have extra classes in chemistry, physics, and other things.
Wow.
Because my science wasn't that good.
Wow.
And then I told him my science wasn't good. So he paid for extra classes. So some of our teachers in school, after school, I would go to their homes to do extra classes and all that. So when I finished secondary school, I had a B in maths, which I didn't imagine that would ever happen.
Wow.
You know? Wow. But now, even like working with there are a lot of things we experiment with these days. I realize that, some of the science ideas that we're working with those days, those are the things that are helping us today, you know? So it's very important that when you're young and you want to do something, just stick to it, but open up your mind and then also form a community with other people, other young people. Create a conducive competitive environment where you can do things and you can share ideas. Or you're doing this, someone else should do the same thing, so that you can compare notes and then you can push yourself together.
And that's why, one of the reasons why I'm very excited about this place, because artists could, just walk here, ask questions and sit with you, and it's really a beautiful thing to have you in Tamale and to have all of these things happening at this particular time, because just there are a lot of artists who would want to just have an experience. Just come here, have a conversation with you, and I'm very happy. Coming here is free. You don't have to pay anything to come here and all of that. Let's talk a little bit about politics. There has been a lot of there's been an upsurge in young people wanting to leave this country and many other African countries because they think there are better opportunities abroad and all of that. They think that there's poor leadership, system are not working, corruption. What do you make of that? What is the problem with our continent, with our country?
You just said everything. There's poor leadership and everything. And there's lack of opportunity and all that. So people would rather risk their life going through the desert, going to the Mediterranean to get to Europe, or people would go elsewhere for programs and they decide not to come back. When I was in uni, there were a couple of my colleagues, we went to the US together to go and do summer program, and some of them didn't come back, actually. And today, a lot of them maybe live in the US and other places. But for me, the question is always, when you come from a place like this, where there is little opportunity, and you have the opportunity of education, like I did, master's, undergrad, PhD, traveling around the world. I've been to so many countries. In a month, I can go to like 10 different countries.
Wow.
And you realize that you're always, your worldview is always expanding. When you come back here, and then you meet the guys sitting at night, their worldview is all around that. People sitting under the tree all day, just discussing gossip, politics, things here and there, waiting for their MP to come and give them money or to give them something before they vote. You realize that there is an opportunity to be able to do something that can influence, if not them, but their lives of their children or the ones who come after them. Yeah. The future is so important. Sometimes we focus so much on the present. And that's what this place has been reduced down to. Oh, if a politician comes to give you 5 cedi, 10 cedi, you vote for him and that's it. Over the next 4 years, there's no accountability. You can't go into him and go and ask him to come and build your road or whatever. But then if accountability was the benchmark, then we would get quite a lot of things. But we also are saying that, fine, we are not going in politics or we're not interested in politics, but we're interested in the work that we are doing to see how that can influence how young people can think differently about how they think about themselves in relation to the communities that they find themselves in and how they can contribute towards it. If I become like an artist or an engineer or whatever, and I can stay here and use my practice to influence change here, why not? Through your work, future generations can become different, and that's where the key is. Yeah.
So you think it lies within us as the people to, make change one after the other, each and every one of us, not to just rely solely on government to.
No, the government has things that it can do to a certain extent. It has to be able to create the conducive environment for ideas and businesses and things like that to flourish. But also in the absence of that, we still have to be able to create that conducive environment for ourselves in order to be able to do things.
There are a lot of people who we've seen from acting into politics, from other areas in the politics. Do you see yourself in politics anytime soon?
No, I don't.
Never.
Except if I have to be of service to my country, where they say, oh, we want you to be able to do this because of your history or speciality in this. And I'm like, okay, fine. These are the conditions that I need in order to be able to get that done. If the conditions are met, fine, I do it. Because sometimes you're also asked to do something and then you're put in a position and you're incapacitated. So I wouldn't go and stand as an MP or whatever.
To be voted for.
No. I can't. I don't have the will and the spirit for that. But if there was an appointment in a position where like, oh, we want you to be able to do this, or because of your history in this, or you can do this, help the country to do this. Like I've made many proposals in the past where I've gone to like the railway ministry and other places and I've said, look, there are buildings that are abandoned. If you give me the chance, I would use my own money to set up, to convert those buildings into museums in the south here and there. And they said no. But there should be a possibility to do that. If you're in a different position or capacity. So I would have given up now and then done it in my own way. But in the future, if I could be in a different position where I could do that again, I would still do it. So because the idea is to be able to open up the forms and the ideas that we're working with on a much more national, continental, and global level eventually. Already is there on a global level.
So you don't think that one has to be in politics to make change? You could do it at whichever level you find yourself.
Exactly, but still, I still believe that in politics we can make the greatest change in politics again, because in politics that's where policy and all these things are made. So when people get into politics, I always think that it's a good opportunity for them to invest into bringing about significant change. Yeah, that's the only reason why anyone goes into politics. To invest or to bring about significant change. So if someone is in politics and they are not interested in change, for me, I don't see how useful.
Why they are.
Exactly.
Wow. Amazing conversation. So before we came around, the other time I had a picture with you and I posted it on social media, asking my followers to ask the questions they would want to ask you should they meet you. So I think we had a couple of questions coming through. So I'll just ask them. Some of them are actually not questions. And then we wrap up with that. So the first one from Era King says, all I admire about him is how simple he dresses on a mission. So I think that's just a statement. And Ayamga Bawa Fatau says, what actually motivates him to do what he is doing, knowing it is unusual of Africans? What motivates you to do what you are doing, knowing it's unusual of Africans?
Well, to realize that there are a lot of Africans who, again, as I said, they are not in the position. A lot of people are not in the position to do the things that we do.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you find yourself in a position where you realize that, as someone once said to me, sometimes God can bless you with the many gifts that he would have given to many people.
Wow.
But he did not give it to them,
Yeah.
and he gave a lot of it to you. So now what do you do with it?
Wow.
You have to redistribute
You
it.
spread it. Wow.
You have to spread it. That's the thing.
Wow.
In the Bible, say now Tamale So now what do you do with it? You have to spread it.
You have to
That's
spread
the
it.
point.
Wow. Okay, so Moses S. Conla says, how often does he think about painting in his mind?
Always.
Always.
Everything I do is about painting. Yeah, it's just that
Okay.
it's painting in an expanded form. Yeah.
So ask him, Abdul Razik says, ask him if he would buy my art of him. So if you would buy, his arts of you.
It depends on what kind of art it is.
Okay. So this other person also asked what inspires him. But I think you've answered that, in their conversation already.
Yeah.
So Don Francis says, tomorrow I'll be teaching about him to my BS5 children during creative art class. I'm just preparing my slides. Okay, so this Idi Mohammed Farid says, what do I have to do for you to give me $20,000? Okay, so Abdullah and Mimba says, does he have thoughts of building a bigger movie premiere center in Tamale? Does he have plans to advance his art centers around the region, like Yendi, Savlugu, Kumbungu, Tolong, and the rest? Arts competitions. It will interest me if he sets up a competition in the north for art lovers or street artists.
Yeah, certainly. Originally the idea to build Red Clay was supposed to be in Kumbungu.
Wow. Oh, wow.
That was where I bought the land.
Wow.
I bought the land, wanted to start building, and then the chief was, the paramount chief was acting funny. Oh, we need to pay money. We need to pay more money after we had paid the initial money and everything. And I lost interest.
Wow.
And then we started building it in here. So sometimes even the local chieftaincy, that prevents a lot of things from happening.
Yeah.
Many people say, oh, I wanted to come and do this here, but there's no, like in Accra and other places, I've tried several times to expand this idea into many different places, but to no avail. Wow. So we're just doing it slowly on our own pace. Yeah.
Amazing. So Habib Hussein says, how does he think about the future of education in Ghana and its impact?
Well, with regards to the future of education in Ghana, it has to be a lot more open and a lot more inclusive. Technology-based, AI, computing, all these things are very creative. Yeah, we have to find ways in which we open up creativity beyond, because sometimes when we think about creativity, we just think about art, crafts, things like that. But science and all these things are part of creativities and all that. So we really have to create an enabling environment, invest into building independent institutions that allow for kids to go there, to learn, to explore without the traditional constraints of the classrooms.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So Nana Kuku Asedu asked, what normally prompts him to paint certain features around which tends to be useful to the community?
Paint certain features around. Yeah. My paintings have to do with the decisions that I make around my work. For instance, building the archive, the library, the parliament, and all. These are paintings. Painting used to be something that you sit in your studio and make a drawing. But this time around, it's an idea, a form. Like, for instance, I can make a drawing of a parliament. Why make a drawing of a parliament when I can build a parliament?
Yeah.
So now the drawing has become 3D.
Reality, yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so Sagani Studios and Film Productions also asked, the train, is it going to work or it's going to be a tourist site?
Oh, they are going to work.
Yeah, I
it's a
think,
tourist site. People can come and see the trains, but
mm.
also the trains work.
Okay, so Alhassan Abdul Muyassir Kamara says, what's his source of funding for your projects?
I work. I teach around the world. I'm being paid. I use the money for the work that I do.
Okay, so say Agba to him. I was at Red Clay last week and was really amazed at the reception and the staff I cited there. He's really achieving the dreams of closing the gap between our imagination and reality. Amazing. Thank you, Mr. Ibrahim, for putting smiles on our kids. Always asking when is holidays so they can go to Red Clay. Okay, so ask him if it is possible for him to bring back the chairs of my great-grandfather Kambong Napiam Zeblim at Wahoo from Germany.
Well, restitution and all these things are ideas that we're working on.
Okay.
When you build institutions like this, invest in them and they grow, in the future, all these things are inevitable. Remember, I was talking about the fact that we're working with the archaeology department in Legon. So some of the old artifacts that were excavated here will all be brought back here. We'll be making larger sculptures and all that. We're talking to institutions in Germany and other places about some of these things. So eventually these things are inevitable. So that's why I'm saying that the state needs to be able to invest heavily into these infrastructures. Investing in the infrastructure means human infrastructure, physical infrastructure, political infrastructure, all these things. We need to be able to create an environment that allows for all these ideas to become possibilities.
Amazing, amazing. It's really been such an honor to have this conversation with you, and I'm glad to hear all the things I've heard, and especially how you are impacting on children within the community and even far. We pray that the Almighty Allah would keep blessing you and keep making you bigger, so you can touch us and touch our children and even generations to come. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
The pleasure is mine.